given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today, guys, we have a great topic. We're going to talk about what you can do to eliminate some of the nerves that you may have on the first day of the job working in corrections. I think, whether it's correctional officers, even civilian staff, we're going to try our best to cover a good amount of concern. Some of it could be generalized and be applied to both. Some of it may be specific to the civilians as well as custody. But I think it's going to be a great dialogue because I know on the first day when I walked into a prison to start my job, I was extremely nervous. And so what I'm going to do is go back and think on my experience and to think like, especially now after having 18 years in, what would have eased those nerves? So basically, what was I looking for as a recruit? And the funny thing is, even as management right now, what I'm looking for right now to ease the mindset of the new people that are coming in. And of course, my guest is Connie. Connie, what's going on? How's being an author?
Hi, everybody. Connie, Alleyne here. Listen, being an author is tons of fun. Certain opportunities and avenues are just opening, which I really appreciate. But I also just appreciate being able to have a body of literature that's out there that can be of service to people who really just want to know what are my options out there. Many times, specifically in corrections, when we've done our time as employees and we retire, many of us struggle with what do we do next? And, it's just really being able to put out there that there are opportunities for you to continue to use your skills that you've acquired over the years. So it's just exciting.
Yeah, it's a great book. It really does document a good journey. And what's great is it kind of tells people that, yes, even in prisons and jails, there are skills that you can learn that can apply to certain goals you may have later in life or during. Some people wind up doing it while they're in their career. Now, Connie, this is going to be an interesting topic. Now, I kind of sprung this topic on you at the last minute, so we'll see where the dialogue goes as always. But as again, I know a lot of people are nervous when they enter the field, so hopefully this dialogue will help ease their concerns, but more importantly, tell them that they're not alone. We're all nervous, so don't let that stop you from being the best that you could be. It's something that we all are going through, especially at the beginning. A lot of unknowns. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections, so please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor, and we come back. Let's talk about the first day on the job, the butterflies in our stomach. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we are back. So, guys, this is going to be a very interesting dialogue. It is a request that was sent my way, and I think it's a request that most of us can relate to because I would like to think that a lot of us were nervous the first day of job. Hey, Connie, when you entered the medical side of prisons and jails, you're laughing. Were you nervous? I mean, was there a difference?
Oh, my God. So this is actually like one of the first things I talk about in my book. Like, cause it is almost a shell shock and you are nervous. I mean, so for me starting out on Rikers, I had no idea where I was going, so in some facilities you park your car and you go to the respective building. At Rikers, you're like parking your car in a parking lot, then you're going through one security checkpoint, then another security checkpoint, then you're waiting for a bus to take you to your respective facility. And, there's no way to prepare you for that. The bus ride, I think, is anxiety provoking because you're like, oh my goodness. And you don't know what the numbers mean. Like, oh, this is a route 5 versus a route 3. It was a lot to take in my first day. On top of that, never working in a secured environment, never working with the population. So I was full of jitters coming in.
Right. So you say a lot of the anxiety is the unknown. So I think you just touched on it right now. One of the best ways to alleviate that anxiety or that nerves that relate to the unknown is really get yourself familiar with the layout of the facility, the specs of the specific job that you're doing. So again, maybe it's reading policy and procedure. Maybe if your management allows, they give you a nice little tour of the place that you'll be working, a little better understanding of the layout, because that to me is always key, understanding the layout. But also, understanding the job and alleviating some of that ambiguity starts to build confidence. It's great when you're able to answer that first question. Let's say whether it's an inmate that comes up to you or a supervisor is trying to drill you, and then you finally are able to answer that first question, that level of confidence that just comes in that can build actually as time progresses. And hopefully people do, like if that's a supervisor, they cultivate that growth. But with that said, I would like to think that, getting to know the environment, getting to know, what your job is for that day, asking questions, just an effort to build familiarity with the job. I think that can lift up a lot of nerves. Would you agree with that, Connie?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to. So I think the challenge, particularly with civilians, is that it's very hard for you to know more about the job before you get there. We don't get that level of exposure prior to starting. But I think the most you can find out, like if you can Google something, you may get just some idea. I certainly logging in and checking out Tier Talk will give you some great insight into what you're doing and what you should be doing or what you can expect. But I really think, so part of what helps take the edge off is when you can do your homework, right? I can research, I can figure some things out, but because they are facilities, there's not a lot of public information as it would relate to your job. Like there's stuff that certainly the public could digest, but for you as an employee to truly be effective and prepared, I don't know that there's just that much information out there available to you.
Well, you're right, but at least there's more than there ever was before. I mean, we do have, like you said, the Tier Talk channel, a couple of YouTube channels. Keith Helwig's got one, William Young's got one. Then you got the Facebook groups that are out there: Correctional Officer Brotherhood, Thin Silver Line, Keepers of Chaos, Correctional Officer Lives Matter. I mean, there's good resources, and once they see that you're new to the job and you're looking to get a sense of knowledge, they're going to go ahead and they're going to help. These communities help. I believe Russ on Keepers of Chaos actually offers a mentorship where he has people that list their little bit of a bio about themselves. And if you're interested, you could talk to them and communicate with them, and they'll give you an understanding of what it's like, let's say, to work in a jail, a prison, a detention center, whatever it is. And that could be for anybody. If a civilian wants to break some bread with a CO, or maybe there's a civilian there that's a mentor. I don't know, but I believe the effort's being done because we know how nerve-wracking it is when you don't have the answers, and how easily in desperation, the inmates are going to see that and try to be that resource. And you have to know that that's not where you go. And guys, again, no matter how nervous you are to get an answer, never be that nervous where you're willing to accept an answer from them. That's not the key, because they're going to see you're nervous, right? But they're also going to see where you go when you need something answered. And when you go to your support staff, or when you go to policy, or when you go to something outside of them that's the correct route you should be going to, then eventually that will eliminate their chance to manipulate, because they'll see that you're connected to what the agency would expect from you. One of the other things that got me nervous when I was working in a prison, well, you know, when I started my first day in the prison, was meeting some of the officers or some of the staff members, because some of them could be a little bit standoffish. And I remember, like, there could have been certain, like, I actually had an okay first day, except at the very end of the day. And that's a story I've shared multiple times. But for the most part, my facility, I had a good FTO. They make sure I'm put in situations that connect me to people that want to teach. So I kind of was welcomed into an environment. That's not always going to happen for a lot of us new boots. And guys, if you're watching this and you're not a new boot and you're a senior officer, think about this, guys. This person's coming in new. They're coming in for knowledge. They want to learn. They're nervous because of the stuff they don't know that they need to know. And they're going to want to go to you. And if at any point you're standoffish, they're going to be hesitant to ask you. And then that's going to kind of not ease the road for them. So, I mean, Connie, have you ever had, like, when you were new, was there people that, you know, you should want to ask them, they're your peers, but they're kind of a little standoffish?
Yeah, so I mean, but I think that kind of comes with the territory, right? People are trying to feel you out. You're trying to feel people out. I mean, but I think one thing that does bring a lot of comfort is when you can ask questions, because there will be a lot of uncertainty. And so the fact that someone might be making it, they might not be as approachable for you to ask questions, especially if that's someone that you're going to be working with. I think that's where some of the nerves begin to build a little bit, because you can't ask those questions. And it's not to say you can't, right? Because things are also perception. So they might be a little standoffish, but if you go and talk to them and you're asking questions, I've found that people want to help. You know, they might not be like bursting at the seams and taking the initiative to help you. But like, if you go in and you're willing to ask questions and they see that you're truly engaged and willing to take notes, like, because you're taking your job seriously, I find that people are very eager to kind of help you along the way. I mean, one of the things that I kind of always taken as like my guide, and I've usually helped other civilians with, is I take it as LOAD, LOAD. So you listen, you observe, you absorb, and then you just don't criticize, right? Because that will help you get through that first day, that you're listening to what everyone's saying. You're trying to observe everything that's around you. You're absorbing the information, right? So even when you start to ask questions, they're more meaningful because you've taken in what you see is happening. So now you have a context to those questions that you're asking. And then the don't criticize is you don't know how come they're doing things a certain way. And I think it's easy to be like, oh, well, I don't know why they do it that way. It's even in like medical, right? There's certain procedures that you might do different in a hospital than what you might see happening in a facility. You know, maybe we don't have particular equipment versus what you might have had experience having in the hospital. So it might be a little different, but I think the not criticizing is just understanding that you are now a part of this environment and you need to get a clear understanding of why we do things the way we do them.
Well, it's kind of like what Rob Greene says in his book on mastery, you know, be the apprentice at first, don't look to shine. And I think that's another thing, guys, real quick, just compliment what Connie said, is that take the time to learn. Don't put more pressure on yourself than needs to be. You know, just do what's expected of you. Watch, you know, just like Connie said, observe, see what's happening. But really, this is your time to learn. Don't put unrealistic expectations on yourself on the first day of the job that you want to be that star person, and you haven't even had a minute in the profession yet. Hold on. Wait a minute. Get an understanding of what it means to be a star employee. And that only happens when you're willing to take some time to learn. And guys, you're learning something new every day. I'm still learning at 18 years. So, you know, don't rush the process of learning, because every day you're going to be learning something. There's not an end game to this. It's an infinite game. So, you know, you're going to learn every day and strive to be better than you were the day before. One of my most nerve-wracking experiences, and this will be more specific to my function, and then maybe you can give me one with your function, was when I was given the keys and had to run a unit for the first time. So this is where I can apply sort of what we were saying here, just to tell people that the knowledge that I'm trying to give is based on experience. What was confusing for me was there were certain things I knew that you could not mess up, and one thing was the count. So I remember when the day started, I was so nervous about the first count. I had 120 inmates, and I had no idea where they could possibly be. I know it sounds crazy, but there's gonna be people here that can relate to that. I had no idea where they could possibly be. So for the first few hours, I was dreading that first count that I had to do, because again, I didn't know if they weren't there, where could they be? And again, the overwhelming sense that you better get this right, because that's the one thing. And they tell you right at the academy, don't mess up your count. Don't mess up your count. And then the moment you get that first count, you're scrambling a little bit. And guys, I'm going to tell you something. When I didn't know exactly where the inmates could be, there were inmates that were quick that would help me. Hey, guys, I didn't make that food service. Okay, but I'm still going to confirm. I'm still going to call food service and make sure they have my inmates. So I did a lot of cross-checking, and I didn't really have any supervisors that rushed me to give them the count. I didn't have somebody, hey, it's been 15 minutes. Where's your count already? So hold on, guys. It's the first time I'm running this unit. So I'm trying to, I don't know these inmates. I'm trying to figure out where they are. So one of the things I did throughout the course of the day was really understand, as I mentioned before, the layout. Where could these inmates be? What detail could they be on, or what trip could they be on, or what program could they be in, or again, just understanding where they could be. Also, with just the regular running of the housing unit, yes, there's certain times that housing units run on, when the mail goes out, when mess goes out, smoke breaks at the time, whatever it was. So lucky for me, I had somebody right at the very beginning that said, call me for anything. So I want to tell people how important it is to take advantage of that. If you have someone that's giving you a window that allows you to call them for anything, if you can establish that connection with a good senior officer that's willing to help you through this, take advantage of that, because you're only going to be lost if you decide that you don't want to bother that person, because they were there, in the same, they were in the same shoes you were, probably not too long ago. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to bother them again. I don't want to bother them again. I called them 6 or 7 times. Call them an 8th time. Call them a 9th time. Because believe it or not, good people that give out those olive leaves, we are expecting those phone calls. Because I'll even say those, like, wow, this person worked the whole day, first time on the job, never called me once. That's unique. So again, I found myself familiar with the layout to lift up some ambiguity for me. And I made myself a resource that I could connect with, that not only helped me navigate through the job that I had to do, but also navigate me through making connections with other officers, introducing me to the officers that he felt wouldn't be bothered by my request for help, and then kind of cleared me away from the senior officers that are just in their routine and just kind of want to do their 8 with no dialogue with anyone. I just want to do my 8 and go home. It happens. But Connie, does that story sound a little familiar with your side of things?
I mean, it does. I mean, I think because, you step in as an administrator, there's an expectation that your stuff. And the moment someone comes to you with something and you don't know, like, it's just like, wow. So I know one of my first days starting, there was a conflict between 2 employees, and I was familiar with the union contract, but I wasn't quite sure. And I had looked through their personnel file. I hadn't seen anything documented that there was ever any friction or there was ever any, supervisory intervention in their conflict in the past. And on top of that, I didn't know them, right? It wasn't like, oh, I know this person. She wouldn't do that, or he wouldn't do that. So it was a very odd and stressful first day where they were at the point of a heated exchange. So it wasn't like I could say, okay, we're going to separate these 2 for now, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. It was one of those, you need to intervene now before this escalates to something else. And so I just remember just pulling on my conflict resolution skills. I didn't know anything about either of them, which was probably a good thing, right? Because then I came into the dialogue just a blank slate, as opposed to having any preconceived notions about who they are or what they would or wouldn't do. I could actually hear the whole story without any of the extra feedback that others might have told me. But it was a very stressful point. And I remember one of my supervisors saying, wow, you work well under pressure. And I was like, do I now? And all I was thinking was like, holy crap, I could feel like the sweat, because it is tense. They're kind of arguing with each other. They don't know me well enough to know what my response is going to be, but it was important to me to create a safe space for them to speak freely, right? And whatever that looked like, I just wanted them to be able to do that before it escalated. And I think for me, because I was previously a union delegate, like we always went through that. So union members don't jeopardize other union members' jobs, right? That was always a thing. And so here it is, I'm trying to remind them that, hey, you guys are together in this. Let's figure out what's going on and let's see what we can do to work it out. So because I wasn't sure of all the union regulations for this particular contract, I actually reached out to another administrator prior to having the discussion and was like, hey, listen, I'm going to have to go into this dialogue with these two. Can you tell me what it is that we do in these situations? And I just don't want to give the situation because then people who worked with me would know what I'm talking about. So I don't want to do that. But I called another administrator and I asked for just some guidance because although I was familiar with the unionized environment, I was familiar with conflict resolution, there was some very specific details in this union contract that I wasn't familiar with. So, I mean, I feel like, yes, you don't necessarily want to ask a lot of questions, but the other side of that is that if you don't ask questions, people don't know how they could support you. Right. And you can't expect that. It's like, oh, no one offered to help. Well, how could they know what you need if you never say, hey, this is what I need, or hey, I don't quite understand something. So, I just say first days can be very tricky. And depending on, where you're starting at on your first day, like when you think about people who are in those isolated posts, I don't know how much support they get when they're first started, or is it you don't get an isolated post because you're just starting, right? Like, I don't know if we do that or not.
Well, that all can depend. I mean, technically, a lot of the positions right now could be just isolated in general. So that's where you expect the supervisors to visit those areas more. Or if you have enough staff, maybe they can drop by and visit more. But unfortunately, you have a lot of facilities that are understaffed. So they may not be particular where they can put a new boot because at that point they're already in desperation mode. So hopefully you can balance that with having supervisors that come in and frequent the areas more. And I also want to add something before we talk about the next part of this discussion, again, with the nervousness, but it's really about understanding the route that you need to take to get the information you need. That's where the confidence comes into play. So even at 18 years, I'm not going to know everything, but I'm going to be secured in the routes I need to take. Even when I interview, if they ask me a question I don't know, I'm going to tell them, you know what, I don't know, but this is how I would get that answer. We have people just in the real world out there that have PhDs. Doesn't mean they know everything, but it means they know how to get the information that's needed, and then obviously the credibility of the degree does matter. But all they're really telling you is that I studied, and if there is a concern, this is how I can get the information that I need. So no different here. No matter how lost you may feel, the confidence will come when you understand the route that you need to take to get that answer, whether it's going back to policy, whether it's connecting back to that CO or that peer that's helped you out before, or maybe even going to a supervisor. And the inmates will see that confidence. Trust me. They'll see it the moment you're back to policy, but the moment you go back to your peers. But at the end of the day, it's okay to not know something, guys. I just want to put that out there. It's okay to not know something. But what's not okay is if you don't know the measures you got to take to get the answer. And I kind of simplified that. Policy, develop a peer that you can trust, whatever the key is. But the path is what builds confidence. Would you agree with that, Connie, before we go on to our next thought?
I do. I feel like, sometimes because people aren't confident in the path, they don't say anything at all. And not taking action is not a good option either, right? Because you never know what the impact of not taking action will be. And so I would just like to remind folks that if you don't know and you're not even sure of the path, the supervisor is the immediate person that you can reach out to just to even say, hey, I would like to know how to go about this thing, whatever that thing is. and allow the supervisor to provide you with direction. Just because you don't know, no one is not expecting you. No one is expecting you to know everything. It's your first day, but people are expecting you to be able to critically think, to be able to do some troubleshooting, some thinking quickly on your feet. That is an expectation that, you know what, you're faced with a situation. Let me think quickly. What do I need to do? At least to get to the next step, right? And so doing nothing is just not the option you want to go with.
Right. And again, that's the key. Just commit to an action, but make sure it's the right action to get the information. So one more area I want to push on, which could obviously be extremely nervous and kind of relates to the environment. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but dealing with the inmate population. All right. So a lot of people coming in, it's true. A lot of people coming in, again, you're dealing with people that could be extremely violent, manipulators. It's a tough population to deal with. And at all time, no matter which inmate you're dealing with, you have to carry that confidence, because the moment you don't, the moment you start to scramble, they start to observe you and they start to think, well, this person is not confident in their job. This person really doesn't know what's expected of them. And therefore, they figure, well, if this person has no direction, maybe I can give them a little direction, because at this point, maybe they'd be willing to take that direction because they're just scrambling out of desperation. So again, one of the general things that we talked about, we'll just briefly go over it again, is inmates need to see that you're connected. So if by chance inmates try to play that route with you, you can build your confidence and eliminate some of that nerves by utilizing the resources that I said. That plays out again here. No different than what I said before. Let the inmates see that your weaknesses is complemented by the strength of the staff or the policies that have been there for years. So therefore, you are never alone. And on the other side of that, staff needs to come through and be that complement. There's no sink or swim here, guys, because if that inmate sees there's that connection there, the inmate actually will see the strength in everyone as opposed to the strength in just the one. So, and that's what we want them to see. I don't want the inmate to just, well, I'm going to get at him because they're alone. I want the inmate to think, well, if I wanted to get at him, I'd have to get at him, her, all the way down. Yeah. Yes, I do a few hers in there just to make sure I'm balanced, but him, her. But the key of the story is that it's not just that person. And again, that comes from you that first day, knowing the route you need to take. But you could picture inmates trying to push on the fact that the staff member doesn't know what to do, and they're going to try to see which way that staff member goes.
For sure. I mean, how many times have we seen it? So, I mean, there's times where there will be a new officer in the clinic area, and he's trying to figure it out, right? He's reading through post orders. He's going through, everything that he's got to go through to understand what's supposed to happen there. And I've seen the inmate say, oh, you just got to take this out and call these people, right? And I'm like, is that really the inmate giving the officer direction? Like, what's happening here? And, I think that if you don't have your wits about you, you may not recognize that you have an inmate giving you direction, right? Like, some people take it, like I've seen an officer say, oh, good looking out, right? Whereas, I guess you could say that, but I feel like that shows that there's been like a shift, right? There is a shift there, whereas, I've seen like really good like captains and such come through and really say like, all right, so this is how we're going to get started today, right? Which like I applaud, because I mean, I've even seen like my nursing supervisor go over and be like, okay, so here are all of our lists for the day, and kind of give him like a way to just get organized. Because I think there are some posts that might be a little more difficult than others, and it makes you nervous because you don't want to mess up. You don't want to do the wrong thing and then send operations into an uproar, right? Especially if you can actually see that happening, right? Because I think that's the other part. Like when you're new and you do have those jitters and you are nervous, you don't really understand the ripple effect of some of your actions. And then when it does happen, you're like, holy crap, look what I just did. You didn't mean to do it, right? But you also didn't have the direction or the guidance that you needed to avoid it from happening. So like, I just think like, yeah, it absolutely happens where there are times that you could be getting direction from the inmates, and you've got to be able to acknowledge that that's not the right place for you to get the direction, because they can get you doing some things that you probably shouldn't be doing, that you just don't know you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's well said. And that's by understanding where your resources are and not being afraid to employ them. I don't care if you don't get along with the supervisor. You still have a question, call the supervisor. I mean, do not feel that, oh, I don't want to bother that supervisor again. Guys, bother the supervisor again. That's what they get paid to do. So bother them again. Let them explain, to higher ups when they're not treating you fairly. Sometimes you do have supervisors that don't want to be bothered. Well, this isn't a profession for that. When you have a rookie, bother them all the time. Let me tell you something. You're going to be, when you're a rookie, yeah, because I'm going to tell you something, man. When I was a supervisor, I expected the rookies to be calling me, because then I also knew a couple of things. One thing is, okay, so the inmates are trying to play them, right? That's why they're calling, but they're calling me. So my concern would be is I know they're going to be played. Why aren't they calling me? So I'm glad that they're calling me, and then I'm able to give the guidance. And again, as a supervisor, guidance is not a role that you can choose. You're a supervisor now.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to say for the peers the same thing. But again, I guess that's strongly recommended. We talked about the ethics thing. But as a supervisor, you are in that position to guide. And again, for the peers, I please do the guidance as well. But the dialogue really is for the supervisors. You can't choose that. Someone comes in, asks for help, you step up and you help them. I mean, that's just what it is, or you help her. That's the key. Now, real quick, we can start coming to a close, but also with the inmate population, there's one more thing that I kind of want to talk about that's just one off the top of my head, is that be familiar, if you can, with the stuff that they're doing to occupy their time. I know it may sound weird, but believe it or not, the more you know about what's happening in the facility around you, the more you know about what's expected from the inmate population, the more you may be able to utilize those tools. Trust me. An inmate's taking a program. An inmate may have a good rapport with someone, that's in the whatever it is. You're able to maneuver. I call it like our community policing. I do. We have so many resources if we know how to use, the resources that we have, the help that we can get from the different departments. And I've noticed that if I'm put in a situation where I'm having trouble trying to resolve, maybe I can specifically think outside the box now and maybe go to that person that's running that program that the inmate may be taking every day. Maybe that person can give me some help. Is it yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. Not everything you can write up an inmate for. Sometimes you really do have to be able to have that skill, that art at communicating. And I just want people to know that you're in this profession, you're not in any way going to be put in a situation that you yourself don't have the resources to handle. And one more other thing I want to add is be yourself. So a lot of people, because someone mentioned this to me, is that they came into this profession thinking that they had to be tougher than what they were, which I disagree. I'm 5'5". I've survived this profession. Trust me, I thought I was a badass before I entered prison, but then I saw people benching 600 something pounds. Like, nah, fuck it, I'm not a badass. But at the end of the day, is a lot of people were so concerned because they were afraid that the person would call them out of that role. Be yourself, and they never can. This is who you are. Be yourself, and they never can. But Connie, I mean, obviously being yourself can definitely alleviate the nerves because, again, I have an expectation of myself. I know that when I'm myself, I can get to that expectation. But if I'm sitting there worried more about perception and all this other stuff and not really worried about who I am and how I'm going to define the uniform, then I will get nervous because I don't know who I am. I don't know what I need to do with this role that people are trying to get me to be. And the best trainer I said is, listen, Gangi, you wear the uniform doesn't wear you. Be yourself, and that will give you the confidence that you need to make it in this profession. Just do what you have to do within, the fact that I know who I am and I know what's expected of me. And that's the key, so it's who you are, and that will help you be effective at the job. So know who you are, and then you can be effective at what you need to do. Would you agree with that, Connie?
Yeah. So, I mean, the knowing who you are is something that I really stress in the academy. So Civilian Corrections Academy, we focus on, that's one of the first classes. particularly because when you aren't confident in the who you are, that's when your environment can begin to mold you into some other person. And in that being that other person, you find yourself doing things that don't align with your value system. You know, ultimately, the being who you are is what allows you to be confident in all of your interactions, because you're not misrepresenting yourself. When you start misrepresenting yourself, and then, you know, the inmates don't see the consistency, right? So like on one end, you're acting this way, at another point, you're acting another way. And granted, different situations may call for you to change tact, but I think to the core, there's a certain consistency in the way you deal with people, the way you deal with the inmates. I mean, for me, I know in the beginning, I was nervous with dealing with the inmates. I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with the inmate who yelled at me or cursed me out or something like that. But what I found was being me, which I'm usually very friendly, not friendly crossing the line professionally, but like I'm very approachable, I'm very warm, like, and I always remain that way. And so it couldn't be misconstrued as me being flirtatious or me being something that I wasn't. This is just who I am, but I'm also still going to set the boundaries with you so you understand that. And I think that's the thing, you know, the having to be tough or play tough. And then when someone gets in your face, you're like, oh my God, no, right? Like you don't want to have to be in that position where you yourself start losing your credibility.
And also losing the confidence in yourself because you don't know who you are anymore. I mean, that's just pretty much it. You know who you are. You keep that foundation with you and do whatever you can to hold on to that throughout the years and tell people that. Don't let that go. Hey, Connie, everything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say we all have our ways of coping with things, right? We start a new job. You're a little nervous. I mean, going into corrections, that's a whole different type of nervous because the threat behind the wall is real, right? And so being prepared to defend yourself, being prepared to really step up and be a true partner to your people, like that's just the reality. So I would just say, if there's any homework you can do to prepare for whichever facility you're going into, try to do that homework. If you're unable to do that, once you get there, make sure that you are in a position where you're learning, you're listening, you're absorbing, you're observing, and you're not criticizing what other people are doing. You're open because you are new and you are learning, and just don't hesitate to ask questions.
I love it because I think we established right at the very beginning that nerves comes from probably being anxious. Anxious is worried about the unknown. Therefore, establish a path for yourself that can give you the confidence needed. Know the resources, know policy. Just, get the knowledge that you need. And then we kind of touched in the end, especially when dealing with the inmate population, know yourself by being yourself. Right? I mean, that's pretty much it. Know yourself by being yourself. Hey, I wonder if that's on a shirt. No, because we were supposed to do a shirt a long time ago and that's gone. We forgot about that, but know yourself by being yourself.
I'm going to check it right now.
All right, so I'll okay, guys, stand by while I play some music. Do 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 do. Is that a shirt?
Let's see.
Is that know yourself by being yourself? Do 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 do.
Nope, I don't.
That's not
any. I don't see
know
any
yourself by being yourself. No. Really? No. All right, guys, listen. All right, guys, here's what we're gonna do. Not kidding. Kidding. All right, guys. Hey, but that you're thinking about it, Connie. You're thinking about it.
I'm looking for it. I'm like, let me just double check. We gotta see.
Know yourself by being yourself?
Yeah.
All right, guys. We're gonna find out. Hopefully, if things work out well, shirts will be for sale. All right, guys. As always, guys, don't forget, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's gonna notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.